All right. We are live, and I will give it a few minutes to give folks time to join, and then we will get started. And as I always say, we've already had a lot of conversation. We already did the the interview and conversation, so we'll catch y'all up on what we've been talking about.
For real.
For real. All right. So happy Sunday. Giving folks
Yeah.
time to join.
Let's see. We have a little bit of a delay.
You all have a delay.
A little
Like
bit.
a
Yeah, just a
yeah.
little
Like
smidge.
yeah.
Okay.
Have a
I don't see it. So
Good. Oh,
your
good.
Oh,
Okay,
great,
good.
great.
It's just,
yeah,
yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
I don't see
cool.
it at all.
Because we're using a hotspot. We're
Oh,
using a
very
mod.
cool.
Yeah.
That connection is really good.
Good. Okay.
Oh, okay,
Good.
great, great, great.
Hey, Crystal. Crystal is here.
Ah, we know Crystal. Hey.
Yay! What's up?
Good peoples right there.
Very. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Yay.
She's saying, hey, she's waving. Good. Happy Sunday, Crystal. Thank you for being here. We are giving it a minute to give folks a chance to join, and then I will do my intro and get us started.
Cool.
All right, I don't see folks in the chat yet, but I see like 7 folks online. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to do the
Okay.
intro and then I'll let you all introduce yourselves and we'll kick it off. So, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Jewel Pearson, and this is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This is Creating Home, a tiny house series, and this segment is one of the conversations on intimate spaces. Every Sunday, I offer live content. I alternate between these conversations and the What's Your Question segment, where I am answering frequently asked tiny house questions. As I introduce myself, I like to say I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I do offer coaching and consultations to help others in their tiny house journey. And you'll be able to find links to schedule with me in the video description below once this goes live. And as I am doing all of that, I like to serve up a lot of representation in the movement along the way. I want us to see ourselves represented here in this movement. It is my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive and accessible. And if you find this information in the video helpful, I hope that you will like it, you'll share it, you'll subscribe to the channel, and then turn on the notifications so that you will know when content is live and available. All right. That was a long intro. All right, I'm going to ask you all, Lucretia and Khalid, to introduce yourselves, please, to the audience.
Okay. Okay. Hey, everybody. I am Lucretia of, I love you. So, I am Lucretia of House of Lukaya and the other half of Off Gridish. I've been a wise woman herbalist for the past 20 years, and that's ongoing. And I've always had a love for the outdoors and wanting to, once I met my herbal medicine teacher, wanted to live on land and be able to bring the beauty that is, getting to know the plants right around you to everyone. So that is one of my goals and purposes in life. And I'm so grateful to have met a partner on this path that was able and willing to go along with that and find his own pleasure in that too. So here we are now on this land together.
Yeah, yeah. Quite. It's been a wonderful journey. With all the things, as the kids like to say today. I'm Khalid Thompson, and an artist, visual abstract artist, and I've been a seriously focused artist for the last about 16, 17 years. Always had romantic notions of nature from the city, from the suburbs, but connected with Lucretia. We knew each other before, but we connected by, I guess, what, like 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And her love for nature kind of just transmitted over to me or transferred over to me. She had me going camping a lot more and hiking a lot more. And then, we were living this life where we had our son. and we decided that city life in DC had run its course, so it was time to look for other avenues in which to live and be with nature. And we can get more into that, but basically, I connected with her, and here we are.
Here you are. Okay, so before we even get started talking about this, so I had Zani from Off Grid Homestead on here before, and as we're talking, we were talking about her journey, and as I still watch her content and people's questions, talk to us about what being off grid represents for you. I still see so many people confused about what that even means. So let's
Yes.
set the standard as we have this conversation.
Okay. Well, that like our name is a big part of how it is for us. So the off
Okay.
grid ish.
Ish.
So
Yeah.
part of that was the ish is very important.
Very
Oh,
key.
I saw
Very
the ish.
important. And I mean, part of the ish was kind of what do they do? The radio edits in hip hop music instead of saying a certain word, and that's
Oh
the
yes,
sound
yes,
that it
yes.
makes. So it's
Uh-huh.
kind of that like vibe too, but also that off grid. Yes, we're not using municipal services. So we use solar, we collect rain. We'll get into what's going on with the well situation, but we're responsible for those daily needs. That's what it means to us. I realize for some it can mean isolation or like separating yourself from others, but that's also part of the ish for us is we want to be clear that that is not what we want to do. In fact, we want to, like I'm always advocating for with people and plants, to start where you are, to start with the plants that are right literally outside your door, like literally the ones right around you. So getting really involved in our community that's around us, and working from there, is
Okay.
what off grid and off gridish means to us. But you add to
Yeah,
that.
so well, like she said, solar power. We collect our rainwater. We use our rainwater to we filter it. Composting is a big, aspect to everything we do. So we try our best to just utilize the natural, like how can I say this? We the natural processes that
Mhm.
work best for nature. When
Okay.
you compost, you're
Okay.
recycling the things from nature and returning it back to the earth, and the earth can then turn that into nutrition, like nutritional rich elements
Mhm.
that can help you grow food and that can just help the environment in general. So we just want to be more supportive, as our society's been so industrialized,
Right.
for the last century and a half. And I think, generations like ourselves who have been exposed to just industrial living are looking back to
Mhm.
trying to have simpler lives and lives that feel more effective. So I think for us, that's what it is, just trying to minimize the amount of grid living, but to also understand that we need grid living for certain things. You
Mhm.
need
Yeah,
you need different
exactly.
services and aspects, and we
Exactly.
don't knock people for living on grid.
Mhm.
Right.
Um, it's just a personal choice to try to work with nature for us.
Yeah, it's
That
not
makes sense.
about and having everybody do everything the same way because
Right. Right.
that actually wouldn't even be natural. Like nature
Right.
is diverse in itself. Like
Right.
it doesn't do everything exactly the same way, and we just want to be connected to that in a very direct daily basis for our basic needs kind of way. It doesn't mean that's the other thing. It doesn't mean wanting discomfort, and that but we want to build up that comfort and have those creatures we have the same creature comfort desires as everyone else, I think.
Right.
But the way we want to go about achieving them and building them up, we want to be really part of building those things up. So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Like I heard a lot of intention in there, intentional living, intentional about how you exist within the land, intentional about how you are using your resources and partnering with the land, so that you're not just taking it
Mm.
is contributing, and so that's a lot of intention. And as I have offer this series, I always start with saying that I believe that our homes, like tiny houses, our journey to um, this more sustainable type of living. There's a lot of it tells a story about us, but there's also a lot of intention behind the
Mhm.
story for these people. Like your journey tells a story about you, regardless whether it's intentional or unintentional. But people who are navigating this path, it generally seems to be a lot of intent in the decisions, that the way you got there, how you're designing your lifestyle, how you're designing your home, how you're designing your homestead. I mean, that is what these conversations, I like to have these conversations focus on, because that also helps other people navigate their journey and understand, you know, the path that they can go into, as you're sharing how you got here, why you got here, and all the things that started connecting for you as you were making these moves. And I always feel like it's bigger than just when I'm talking to people in tiny houses. Like, I don't want to talk about your pillows, where you got those pillows from, and the chairs and that kind of stuff. Like, I really want to talk about the people and the process to get there, and that type of stuff. So the intent behind that. So thank you for that explanation. Because I always, like, I watch Zani all, I think that's how I'm saying her name right. I watch her all the time as people say, well, if you're off grid, how are you posting on the internet? And I'm like, oh my God, what do people think
It's like,
off
I'm
grid
still
means?
living in this time on this earth. Like, I still exist in 2023. Like, what?
We got the internet now,
We're
y'all.
not,
We got the internet.
we're not trying to live in another
In a
time.
cave, like a caveman, yes. And I'm just like, and she is so patient with them as she is explaining them, and not be like, block, delete, because there's some basic things that you just don't even get, that I don't even have time to go through trying to explain. Yes, I'm going to use the internet. I'm not going to send fire signals to
Like,
the
come
next
on.
door
Or
neighbor.
pigeons, carrier
Come
pigeons,
on.
right? We're not doing that no
Exactly.
more.
It's good to know those things, but you know.
It's cool, right? If we got to go back, as you know, society decides to fall flat, we got to do those things. That's one thing.
And
Right.
I mean, really, part of what got me on this path in general with plants, even 20 years ago, you know, my dad was ill, passed away 3 days before World Trade Center. And I was living in New York at the time, but happened to not be there because of his death and funeral services and all that. So I wasn't there for those first days of that, but I went back to that not long after. So when I talk about, you know, the ish is important in the off-grid ish, it's because when I first got on this path, it was very fear-based. It was very much about, you know, I gotta separate from what's going on with this and figure something else out. And I was just very grateful to find the teacher and the people who were in the wise woman tradition of herbalism, which set me on the path of connecting to nature, not operating out of fear, you know, operating out of becoming comfortable with your environment, whatever it is. And that was a big theme, that like, you're living in New York City, but the nature is still there. Nature can't not exist where humans are, you know, we're part of it. So yeah,
even cities are expressions of nature. It's all relative to nature.
Yeah.
Wireless internet is awesome.
So you started exactly a hot spot. Like, that's it. We've already had that conversation, how well the hot spot is working for you all, and we're going to talk about where you're sitting right now. But it's a beautiful thing. But talk about the journey getting here. So Lucretia, you started the journey talking about this journey with the passing of your father. But you also at one point were doing the band life, and then you did the schoolie, and now you're kind of continuing to transform in this journey. Can you go back to the early beginnings of how this started and what it looked like, and as you were moving through this process?
Well, you should talk about DC, because really, because we weren't together when I initially got on this path of plant life and outdoors and all that. And my teacher at that time, you know, she still does live on a homestead in upstate New York. And so that's where I was first exposed to that. That was 2001, 2002. And I apprenticed up there and got to live there for a period of time and would visit back and forth while I was living in the city for 6 years. And so then when I moved back home to Virginia, you know, I was still kind of in a city. Richmond is a smallish city, but it's a city. And so I was still trying to find my connection back to that, because I had been exposed to this thing that now I really want to do. And, you know, had relationships, living life, diverting on the path and all that. And then we got together and our son came along not long after that. And so I moved to DC, where he was a bike messenger for many years. And we were living that life. And I was staying home with our son, homeschooling him and running my business, House of Lukaya, and doing all that. I was still running the herbalism business, doing workshops when I could, that kind of thing. and just really feeling, this was never my intention with having a child. I always wanted to do
Okay.
that. I did not want to do that in a city. That just wasn't
Okay.
how I was so grateful to meet the women that I met at that time in DC who were from there and who kind of like sheltered me from some of the things that I think I was concerned about raising a child there. So gave us that good experience there too. But he was around like 3 years old or so. He's about to be 10 now. He was around 3 years old, and we were just both kind of like, it's time to do something different. And
Okay.
his time being a bike messenger was coming to a close. Like it was really like, I really want to focus on my art. How can we do this? And I was like, I'm all for that, but we can't do that here. Like there's got to be some other way to do that. And so, I just started doing this research, and I'm so glad that Crystal Vanner is here today, because her video that I saw when she went to the RTR, and my searching for, and of course I'm typing in Black people doing these things, because growing up, I grew around a lot of white people.
Yeah.
I grew up in the suburbs. And so I was one of very few Black people around. And I always saw these different ways of living and these different interests were white people doing it.
Right.
And so, I'm like, well, but I'm interested in it. But how do I don't want to always be the only one. You got to do what you got to do. But I'm not trying to always be the only one. And so seeing, she's so sweet, seeing her video was like, okay, all right, we're out here doing this. Now I know I'm not nuts. And now I know that there's a way to do it. You don't have to have a ton of money. You just have to have the drive to do it. You have to want to make this change, and that you can start from what you have. Again, going back to how I talk about plants, you start with where you are and build off of that. And so grateful that after, inundating him after a long day of work, hey, watch this video. Hey, watch this video. Watch this video.
Hype.
Yours was one of them, Jewel. Crystal's videos.
Hype with a capital HYP.
It was on from then. Like like I go in when it's time to do something. Like I go in, and I went in on trying to figure it out. And so
that's the due diligence. That's the due diligence audience that I'm always talking to you all about doing your due diligence and finding people that you can relate to, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If there are people out here, start learning from that. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and that due diligence will come up later in the conversation, but I'm going to let you talk about all the RV searching and kind of where.
Oh, wow.
Because that's,
Well, like I brought up in another interview we were doing, it's really, and I'm sure you can, relate to this, Jewel. It's like you have a vision of wanting to live your life differently. And instead of just kind of letting that ruminate in that space, you start to try to actively, whether you have all the resources together or not, take active steps into realizing this, whether it's doing research, starting to go to different spaces to get information. But for us, being a messenger for 15 years in DC is what I did as a full-time job. I also became a serious artist up there. And then once we had a family, it was about making sure that I could provide the money for the mainstay bills and focus on my career and also focus on them as a family. I was always an active person. I've been a creative person, a free spirit person. I never liked to work a typical job, be in an office space, be at a desk. That wasn't really ever my nature. So, that's part of the reason I fell in love with bike messaging, was because I was outside all day, and it was recreation. I could be active. So when she started to propose to me the notion of getting land, it kind of even just philosophically felt like the right thing to do. It's a lot different when you start taking the active steps to doing it. But we were in a situation where, as a bike messenger, I'm not making tons of money in DC. And so we were trying to figure out how we could accomplish this goal with the money we had, which wasn't much. So we were just like, well, look, we are going to start actively going out and looking at land spaces like we already have the resources available. So we would take trips throughout Virginia and go meet with different realtors or go see different land spaces. And then also, in addition to that, I would always emphasize us going on hiking trips a lot. We lived in the city. Even after work, she would come pick me up from work and we would go hiking, because I was making a conscious effort to say, like, look, we're going to spend as much time in nature as possible to let nature know that this is what we want. So we're going to actively manifest. It's the time you spend with things, right? So it doesn't have to always be literal, but you can use intention, like we were talking about intention earlier, in an active way to draw on the things that you're imagining, you're dreaming about. Make our efforts to spend as much time in nature. And then, it came to being like, well, with what little money we had, what did we want to invest in? And Lucretia was interested in campers at the time because we were thinking we could probably find some people that we knew that had land and stay on their land. But as we would
Okay.
go to like Delaware and Maryland and different places to look,
We did Pennsylvania.
yeah, went to
As far as
Pennsylvania a few times.
Yeah.
We just found out that the resale value, the keep up isn't, or the upkeep isn't all that great with these things. So, and I started thinking more in terms of like, well, look, why don't we find some land that we can actually be on? That way we don't have to deal with the politics of being on somebody else's, which is fine if that's what you got to do. But for us, it was about like, yeah, having creativity, having the means to be able to kind of set it up the way you want. And so we decided to start looking for land in Southwest Virginia. And the second property we found was this property. And it was just a matter of like, well, we don't have thousands of dollars to come in and have areas clear cut with older trees. This property had been cut for timber 14 years prior to us purchasing it. So there are a lot of young trees on the property with some older ones. So we were able to come in right away and like chop up like a lot of these smaller trees, make paths, set up some rain catchment, get a driveway eventually. And the guy that did our driveway was nice enough to clear like a quarter of an acre for us. He was like, just in case you get a camper or something to stay on. And then after that, but before we moved down here full time, we would go back and forth on the weekends from DC, come down here with no knowledge of what we were doing. Little tools we had. We talk about reciprocating saws, hand saws, some chainsaws, and just in here just having fun, really. It was like a therapy for us.
I still have my machete from Walmart that I got 4 years ago. And by the way, it still works, I got to say. But we were using stuff like that, just to get through, make little trails for ourselves.
It was just a passion. Once we were able to get access to some property, it was like, wow, and then every time we would stay down here, you're away from the city life, you see the stars at night, it's quiet, it's peaceful. We just knew this is where we wanted to be. And then
talk about the van. A couple months after we got the land, right? A couple months after we got the land, that was in August, and then so not even a couple months. We knew we needed something where we could haul things, because we were like, we're going to be using reused materials. We're going to need something. Right. So, and again, van life to me was that was still a portion. That was still something that I wanted to do and wanted us to be able to do, because we do markets and things like that. And we want to be able to travel to do those things. Good morning. And and so I was looking at, back then, it wasn't Facebook Marketplace. It was still Craigslist. Just 4 years ago, I was looking on Craigslist and found this van for $500. And I was like, wow. And it was being sold by a farmer, some farmers not far from it. They're like 30 minutes from us. And we're still in touch with them, and we still buy produce from them. And but they were retiring this van that they had gotten from a farmer. And so it had a few owners. They were all in line with kind of what we were trying to do. We knew it needed a lot of work, and we have done a lot of work on it over as we can. But it has been true. Like, and we stayed in that van when we first got, as soon as we got a driveway, we were able to stay in that van here and do work overnight. When we would come on those trips from DC, we'd park the van at my mom's, who's like an hour away from here. And he and I would come while our son was there hanging out with her, and we would be able to stay overnight and get even more work done in that short amount of time on the weekends. And then from there, once COVID happened, his work almost, completely stopped. Yeah. And it was like, well, we can stay here, and like, I know they got this rent moratorium right now, but I don't want to owe this person rent. And then we started calculating the rent. And it was like, which is also part of what helped us decide to get land in the first place. But in 5 years in that apartment, we paid $60,000. And when I heard of that number in my head, it was just like, this just has to change. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so we decided when COVID happened that this is a good time. My mom welcomed us to like make that transition, get your stuff, bring it here, figure it out, go back and forth from here. It's closer. You won't owe rent like that. So that's what we did. And then maybe a year of doing that, some neighbors around here saw that we weren't all of a sudden building this gigantic house, which I think when they first saw us and our DC license
like,
plates, they were like, okay,
they
like
coming with
they're
the
coming. We
Skrilla.
were like, no. And
Yeah, coming with that
so
money.
they saw us here, weekend after weekend, and they were like, okay, I know somebody with some buses. Would you be interested? They don't run, but would you be interested in having that on your place because it's bigger than your son can be there? Like, and we're like, oh, okay, this is getting time to make this actual change now. And so they helped us bring this bus here. The bus was $400.
Oh wow.
Had
I
some
know, right?
because it didn't run. It still, it probably could have, but it had some of the seats taken out because the previous owners had used it for storage, and I think they had done some traveling in it as well. And so we completed taking out the seats and built some bed platforms and made a little kitchen area and proceeded to set it up with how we knew how to do. A lot from the camping life, was what we brought into that. And we were like, we'll
Okay.
figure it out as we go along. And then, so we were there for a year in the bus. And Khalid kind of just tilted just a little bit to the side at the top, just a little bit. I couldn't wear my hair like this, but
Okay.
it was perfect for our son because he's the right height.
Right.
A year goes by and we're realizing, like, yes, we're going to continue doing this. It is, we moved in there in October. So it was just before winter. We had a lot of money that ended up getting spent on heating.
I was going to say, how was that? How was winter? Yeah.
It was heated, but expensive. Very
Okay.
expensive to keep it heated. And obviously that was our goal, to keep it heated. And so we did that, but we had to pay a lot for that. And at that time we were then, we had started teaching with a homeschool group. And that was a semi-steady income, but then we're also relying on what I make from my business, what he makes from his business. And so that is not a consistent thing. And so it was a very difficult time to be able to we didn't see that as being the focus when we initially did it, that it's going to cost that much because prices went up during COVID, all that
everything. Yes.
The work changed. That was also part of the problem, that the work we were able to do, because we do markets, we do, so we had to shift to this online thing, which wasn't, that's not what we had been doing previously. So that was a learning curve too. And so that went on for a year. Spring came, we started preparing a garden space. He's digging out gigantic roots, to make space, because like we said, it was all trees. And so we're like, okay, with the spring, we're not spending the money on the heat, so we're going to figure this out. We're going to be growing our food. And then we ended up having car trouble, and both of our vehicles needed transmission rebuilds in the same month.
Oh wow.
So this thousands of dollars. And it's like, okay, well, the trade, we taught, like, we need two vehicles, because when one of us is gone and one of us is here with our son, we need to be able to leave here if we need to. We need to be able to move around, so that we don't want to give up both cars. So we had to make that decision to finance those repairs. So while we're waiting on the repairs, because that was the other thing, the supply chain, the busyness of the mechanics, that took forever. So we're at my mom's for a while during that period, and we see this show, Homestead Rescue.
Okay, hold on before you go there. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. So what was it like being there during COVID, during the pandemic? What was that experience like for you all?
I mean, it was awesome. Like, I'm gonna keep it 100. Like, I mean, for us, I think that was the beauty of it, is just, we're here in Virginia. It's not like we were in DC, where the mandates and the restrictions were far more severe because of all the people and their proximity to one another. So the laws were pretty lax in Virginia, and
which wasn't appealing to a lot of people. But we're out here, there's not people up on you out here. So that was like refreshing to have this space. And especially, like I said, for our son to have this space where he could still be running around and be outside.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, it was it was a time that we utilized it for healing, reflection. I think, we started taking a yoga teacher training at that time with a good friend of ours who's a yoga instructor. At the time, I was taking therapy. I was just trying to utilize the time as much as I could to be like, well, the most valuable thing we have in life is time, right? And I think a lot of people, depending on the circumstances, were using that for reflection. And we had the land. We were blessed to have the land as a space where we could, come in and be at peace. So, for us, it was a blessed experience, not to ignore what was happening in the world.
Right.
Very aware of that, and we're very sympathetic towards it, and we're understanding about it. But all things happen all the time. So even during the worst circumstances over here, there's something that's positive that's happening over here. So it was a blessed time, for us to really get our hands in the dirt here, figure out how to be in the space, to live on the bus, to get a routine going, to reflect, and we're thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've spoken in different conversations thinking about like not everybody's journey was the same during that time period. Like there were people who were experiencing hardship, and then there were people who were thriving because they were able to reset and take that time to work on themselves and do the things. They worked from home. There wasn't much change to their life cycle, and so it was like what you were saying, like so much effort needed to be put into understanding and having compassion for other people because the journey wasn't the same. There were so many different impacts to people around COVID and the shutdown. And so it was just a question that I wondered what that was like being out there for you all. Now, give us some background. So like how far are your land from like a major area, major city, or is this a major city and you're just a few miles out? Give us a little background for
we're about an hour, 15 minutes south, west of Richmond, Virginia,
which is the biggest city in the region.
Yeah, it's the capital.
And then we're like 25 minutes from a town. Like we can get to a town where there are stores and the stuff you would normally see.
But it's more rural,
a smaller town. Yeah.
It's very rural out here, right outside of the town. But a small, it's a college town, about like 20 minutes from here.
Yeah.
So we have that access to those things if we need. The cool thing about living out here is there are a lot of farms. There's a Amish community out here in the area, so we source a lot of our meats and our dairy products from those local farms. We're not in the position to process meat and stuff and harvest meat on the land ourselves yet, but we still want to have that access to the what we consider to be the best quality meats and dairies as possible, and grow our food and source our produce from other farmers if we need to. So but it's a cool area. It doesn't feel far from Richmond. We're used to traveling and driving a lot. Like I said,
we were just in Richmond yesterday doing a market.
Yeah, I'm up there doing a mural project right now. So and that's the thing for us, because she's an herbalist and I'm an artist, and I just don't paint and sell paintings. I also teach, also do, workshops. I do live painting performances with musicians. And we also work together as off-gridish and do markets together. So, a lot of our time, depending, clusters of it can be spent like going out and getting that bag, as a kid said.
Right.
Our challenge right now is to put ourselves in a circumstance where we feel a greater permanence here. Because we'll have stretches where we're here, we're here, living, we're doing our thing, we're vibing, we're connected. Ever since the show left, we've pretty much been here the whole time. But then this mural project came up, and the back and forth and doing different things sometimes. So that's our biggest situation right now, is just feeling that level of permanence. Like when we're here all the time, we're like, oh, it's like a long lost relative, hugging trees and whatnot. Even a week feels like a long time for us.
Yeah. Okay, so I didn't want to cut you off. I did want to ask some questions. So now let's talk about the show. So for those of you that don't know, they recently participated in Homestead Rescue. That's the name, right? Homestead Rescue, right? Yes. Okay. So let's talk about the show, how that came about. Like I have some questions, having been involved with the show myself. Like I kind of wonder how that show worked for
I
you
bet.
all,
Right.
and some of the background stuff. But go ahead, and then I'll ask my questions. I'll see if you tell some of the answers to my questions, or I'll
Right,
go
before
ahead
you
and
even get to rolling with them, Jones. Right, right. So look,
I'll be
I let
interested
her. You were about to like you were
how I
segueing
got
into
to
that.
it,
You
how
were
we got
segueing
to
into
it.
that.
Yeah.
But I think it's key to mention the show that you
Oh,
were
that's what I was gonna
looking at
say. Oh
before
yeah,
and
totally.
why.
Oh
And,
yeah, that's
so
a
people
yeah.
can check
Okay,
that
yeah, yeah,
episode
yeah,
out
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. You know what
Yes,
I'm
yes,
saying?
please do. So a friend of mine had told me, and this is why I'm like lamenting. We're at my mom's again, love her, but it's not where I want to. I grew up there. I don't
It's
want to live there
moms.
now,
Yeah.
And so like I'm like, oh, I could stay connected, and so I'm there with all this TV happening. A friend of mine tells me, oh, did you see this episode of Naked and Afraid? There was a black woman on it with dreadlocks, and she did amazing. And I'm like, what, on that show? Because I've seen that show, and that is not the vibe of that. So I had to hunt it down, right? So I go on Discovery Channel, I get Discovery Plus so that I can see this show. And sure enough, there's this woman, I can't think of her name, but it turned out Khalid knew her from DC from doing capoeira. So it's a small
okay.
world, but like he hadn't seen that yet, but I showed it to him later. Like, just look at this woman; she's amazing. So this woman, she's there, she's singing to the land, she's just doing beauty. I'm just like, oh, I can't believe they showed this. And I really enjoyed that show. And so then, it recommends things to you, after
Okay.
you've watched something. And so then it recommended you may like the Homestead Rescue. And I'm like, Homestead and Rescue? Okay.
Right.
Watching. I was like,
We were
that
living
sounds like
that.
something I
Yeah.
might be
We were
interested
right,
in.
right.
And so I start watching it, and immediately, first of all, the family on it is awesome. Like they're just really entertaining to watch, but also just the vibe of the show. While it has its element of like, oh, this, that, this, but the vibe of the show is like, how can we help? How can we help? Like, let's help each other. Like, let's teach each other how to do these things. That family have been doing living off grid for their whole lives, the kids. And the father had been doing it since he was a teenager. And so I was just really interested in people who'd been doing it for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I noticed up into our season, we are the 10th season, but there were like a few black families on there, which again had me like, oh, okay, we're there, we're doing this thing. It's not just us, but just even all the families on there. The fact that there was a running thread that they wanted to do something different, and they may not have known how to do it, but they
Right.
jumped into it. They may have had plenty of money and they still didn't know how to do it.
Right.
And
Right.
they made big money mistakes, as opposed to we've made
But
mistakes, but they
it
didn't
won't. It
cost
won't really.
a lot
Right.
of money. It's like, so because we were learning. So I'm watching this show, and then I show it to him. He's watching this show. We're laughing, we're crying along with the people, like, oh my gosh, like somebody understands, because nobody around us is doing what we're doing.
Right.
Even the people who live
Exactly.
around us are not doing what we're doing. And so he made a joke one day, because it showed at the end of the episodes, it'll say, do you know anyone who needs help on their homestead, or do you need help in your homestead? Write to this email. And he's like, you should write to them. And I'm like, okay. So I write to them. It's really that simple. Like, I wrote to them. They contacted me back in about a month. And so they contacted me back in a month. 4 months later, after doing Zoom meetings, talking to producers, they were here in 4 months. And then they came and went in 10 days. And they were filming for 8 days. They made incredible changes in that amount of time. And then that brings us to now, where after the show aired, because they were here in October, so it's been a year.
Okay.
The show aired in March, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe that very week, we got a call. You got a call from the state. You got a call from the state
Yeah.
not long
Yeah.
after it aired,
Mhm.
because a neighbor reported us
And that
to the
so
state.
so stop for 1 second, because I have always said code enforcement, zoning, they are not necessarily riding around looking for stuff. It only happens from a nosy neighbor,
And that's
a
what they told
hater.
us. They were like, you weren't the only one this week. I had to send out 9 violation letters, because that's what people do. They were like, don't
That
take it
haters,
personal.
haters. nosy neighbors always in somebody else's business, and that is what happens. And I
Yes.
like get you some
Yes.
business. Sometimes now I will say sometimes it happens. So like with a tiny house, somebody
Mm.
might say, if your tiny house is out there, somebody might call and be like, "Oh, I'm interested in a tiny house, and I was wondering what the rules were." And they'll say, "Well, we don't allow tiny houses." And then they'll be like, "Well, it's one down the street from me." And the next thing you know,
Oh,
Oh.
good.
they're on your in your business like that. So sometimes they don't necessarily have ill intent. They are
Right.
interested in
They're trying to
doing
get
the
information.
same,
Yeah.
but they don't know. Just do it and mind your business, and don't go asking questions. Just
Right.
Thank you. Thank
Right.
you.
I mean,
okay.
Google it can be helpful.
Yes,
Like,
but
yeah.
some people don't know, so they'll go out telling all their business. Like, so
Yeah.
in your due diligence, remember when I say to you, audience, when I say you're trying to get information and you're interested in doing blah 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 on your land, and you want to call and ask questions, do not give up your information. You're just asking questions generally. Don't give your name, don't give your address, don't do any of that. You just want to get some information, and don't tell your business, get the information. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And don't tell your neighbor's business.
Exactly. Don't tell your neighbor's business. Don't throw other people under the bus.
Yeah.
Yes,
Literally.
just mind your
Literally.
business. Literally, don't throw them under the bus. Absolutely.
Yes.
Basically,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, and the funny part, that's why I'm laughing about that, because it's actually the neighbor. Well, we're pretty certain. If it was a court of law, I couldn't say 100%, but we're pretty certain that it was the same neighbor that,
99.9%.
not the
Right.
neighbor on the show with us, obviously, but a neighbor that helped us get the bus.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a whole thing. So, yeah, that started a chain reaction of, now the county is involved, and there's things that had to be changed because the nature of a show that's being filmed in 10 days, you
Right. They're
know,
not doing all the permitting and the dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
They're
Yeah.
shooting a show,
they're shooting a show. And
Yeah.
so, a lot from that episode was definitely TV. A
Right.
lot of it
Right.
is reality, because we are real. Our child is real, our
Right.
land is real, and they actually made these changes. The narrative of the show is something they come up with, and to make it more TV,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my questions, because knowing how the shows work in the background, so the show, they get the cabin from the neighbor, and then they turn the bus into
Greens. Yeah.
your greenhouse. So were those ideas that you were already pursuing, or was that really all of them doing this work and finding these resources?
Yeah.
It was more, I guess you could say, it was somewhat collaborative. They come to a given area and they try to use the local businesses and talent
And
to
use
get
what you have.
information, yeah, and
Yeah.
use what
Use
you
you
have.
have.
They try to, the Rainies in particular, they're homesteaders and have been. So, even though they have a successful construction company and stuff like that now, they really try to keep that ethic or that ethos in the show. Like, really, like, what do you have on the property that we can use? Like,
Okay.
this tree house here,
Mm.
the main base of it and the perimeter of it is made from pallets that we were using as a staircase on our bus.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot, they really try to stick to that. And I guess was I want to lead that into? I kind of
The collaboration about the turning. So,
okay.
like, we thought they were going to maybe build off of the bus, because one of the main things that was
We came up
asked,
with
because
ideas,
we
right,
came up
right.
with ideas of things
They
that could
asked
happen,
us to do that.
and then
Okay.
because
And then they
it was
kinda
like,
went
what
off
they
that.
look at what your major issues are, and they're always worried about, obviously, food, water, shelter.
Right.
And those are main issues for everyone. And so, knowing that he couldn't comfortably live, I mean, really, 3 people in a bus, it can be done, obviously, but as far as needing to do other things and our goals, we actually want to one day build a wooden yurt. That's like one of our big goals here, and we have a space
Okay.
that we had cleared out to do that. So the cabin really came from them not having wood. There's no trees big enough here. Typically, like other
Right.
episodes,
Okay.
built
Okay.
from the trees that are on the property. And so, the neighbor Randall, who was on the show with us, he actually is a friend of ours, and he knew of this place down the street. There was a former forced labor camp, about 2 miles away. That didn't get really discussed on the show at all. And so her face. That's what I call them. I don't, other words sounds like tranquil.
I had just taken a sip of my smoothie. I almost spit out my. Did she say forced labor camp? Okay,
I'm
okay,
like, dang, are you going there with it? You just calling it what
Oh,
it
that's
is.
what
okay.
What it
that's
is.
what it is.
What
That's
it
what
is.
I mean, it's
Let's
not
be
what it is
real with
now,
it.
but
Let's be real with
that's
it.
what it was. And so that's the other thing, I don't know who knew what in the show, but he didn't know. He was charged with, can you please find a structure around this area for these people, because we can't build anything. I think that's kind of like he was given that task to find that. And he works with horses with his wife around the area, and they do many other things. He's a blacksmith, and so he knows lots of people. And so he was asking around, and this couple who owns this land over there now had said, like, well, this is something that you all could use. And so I don't know if it was the plan initially, because again, the Rainies show up, and that's their formula, is that they get to be on your land without you there, but just for a day, and then they figure
Okay.
out what they're going to do. Now the producers, probably obviously know way more about what's
Mm,
going on, and so they knew about the cabin. I don't know if it was the intention to bring it here all in one piece, but that's what happened. And so
okay.
that's how the cabin ended up here. And the bus got turned into a greenhouse because Misty, the daughter, she was like, she handles the gardening aspect of things. And so that's why she brought that idea. And we were going to put a rain catchment system on the bus. We had gotten a gutter and we're going to do all that, but turning it into a greenhouse wasn't in our thoughts because we were
Part of
living
it.
in
Yeah.
it. So,
Right. Right.
yeah.
That's pretty amazing,
So
though.
yeah,
It was pretty
it's
amazing.
it works
I
very
mean,
well.
it
Yeah,
was
it's
just, it
really
was,
cool.
but like to go into more like you were saying, the behind the scenes and the technical side. So they shot a ton of stuff. As you know, these
So
shows,
Yeah.
they
yeah.
get
Yeah.
hours upon hours and days upon days of footage. And then when you look at the final edit, you're like,
How is
oh, there was
that?
so much amazing stuff that got caught, or,
Yeah.
that could
Absolutely.
have, I guess, been used figuratively, but it wasn't used.
Mhm.
And so it becomes this very condensed kind of like, and then you start to see, oh, this is the formula of the show.
Right.
They
Right.
want to
Right.
show a dilemma, and then they want to show how they resolve
Absolute.
that
Some
dilemma.
drama. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like when the
they
house
want
is
all that.
moving and
And
hitting the trees, they got to have some
Just
drama.
right, like everything,
Whoa.
right? So,
we're
Whoa.
still,
you know,
we gotta say something about the cold night.
oh, well, that was one of the things, So, as for TV, they got to frame a narrative. So, the narrative was
Absolutely.
like we were here throughout all of winter in 2021 it was, because they
Yeah.
came in
Yeah.
2022. We were out here renting, I mean, ice storm, everything. Family on the bus. We got two nice propane heaters on there. We're cozy. We're good. We're living on the land. We're doing our thing. But the narrative that they constructed was that, in Virginia of all places, the winter was so rough here, and
Oh yeah.
we couldn't tolerate it on the bus. So then we had to have our son Kiyoshi, who stayed with us the whole winter, by the way. We had to
Stay.
But
send
he
him
had
off
to
with our
leave.
grandmother until we could hold up this collapsing fall.
Yes.
Homestead that was about to fall down.
Yes.
So, and they kind of
Well,
engineered
and that was also, I
that.
think, protective. I think some people's
Oh,
purpose
well,
in that was protective for us.
it's
And
legal.
well, I don't know, like, yeah,
Having a
because
child, it's a
having a
construction
child
site,
around the
on a
construction
construction site.
site, like, how do you
Got
make
it.
it part
Yeah.
of the story that he's not here? Because otherwise,
Yeah.
it's boring. That we can't have
Gotcha.
him here because of legal reasons. But
Right.
also, I think because everyone doesn't understand why
Off-grid
parents
living.
would make the
Off-grid living.
choice to live this way with their children. I think that's also part of the thing. And it's like, okay, I mean, feel free to ask questions about it, but I think that was protective in that way to kind of
Very
like
possibly so. Yeah.
keep us, because we definitely got comments afterwards where it was like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, because it was like,
Absolutely.
whoa, you sent them to your grandmother's, how that's awful. Oh, why was he not with you? Like,
Right.
but how could
Right.
you not have this if he's with you? And it's like, well, which one is it that you want it to be?
I mean,
So
people don't
Right.
realize
they
that
don't understand how people live around the world and make choices to live around the
yeah,
world.
and that there's a diverse way of living and being in the world. But like reality TV, as you know, reality TV is just that.
It's still
Reality
TV.
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's
still
not
TV.
reality, and people on the other end who are watching it, they don't know or don't really care. They just want a story, and
Right.
they
Yeah.
take it as fact, and that's fine for us. I mean, I could care less. I was just trying to be in a situation where we could help our family.
Right.
We did
Right.
a lot of work.
Those
The
are-
Rainies, and I can attest to this, and she can attest to it as well. They are really good people. Like they
They do
they
the
have an
work.
everyday vibe. Like as
Yeah.
soon as the cameras on, and that time you see us meeting them for the first time, as soon as they stop rolling cameras, we're all sitting there talking and chatting it up. And Marty was like, hold on, we got to stop talking because we want to get this for the camera because it's so fluid. Kind of like we vibe as soon as we hit the ground running with you. It's just like, go, just good people, like really.
And they're doing the work when the cameras aren't rolling.
Yeah, they're there, they're working, and they really want to like, what's your vision? And given the circumstances and the time we have, how can we help y'all with that vision? They're really there to help.
That's excellent.
Yeah, producers, people who were on the show have worked on other shows, and they were like, this show is about as altruistic as you'll get.
And about as authentic. Like,
Very
one
good.
guy to visit before the show, like he's like, I think participates in the build coordinating. He was saying he's worked on other reality shows, and he's like, we'll build these sets, we'll build all this stuff, but then it ends up just being a set, and it gets taken down and a lot of times thrown away. And so he's like, they'll try to go out and give it to people who are locally in that area. He's like, but this show, like the stuff that's built is really there. It's really actually built and meant for people to utilize.
Yeah.
We really appreciate that about it. But that brings us to what I wanted to say to your viewers about the due diligence in these situations, whether you have a show coming or not.
Absolutely.
To just, like you said, call and get that information. Don't give out your information, but definitely get that information. I think we very much thought when we were purchasing the land that we did research and we did ask certain questions, but now we know other questions. Now we know other things that, would be good for people to ask and find out about their area, because every area is different.
Yeah. And just to be clear, that kind of plays into the thing of like a lot of people who are kind of inquiring about off-grid living or tiny home living or nomadic living, alternative forms, especially from our community. And, Americans are so modernized now. And so they have a lot of questions about, well, how do you really make that work? We've been living this way our entire lives. How does that really work? And I think, speaking to what we were talking about earlier, like risk-taking, taking chances, passion, like you can do this. Like, it's important to understand that, or you can do it from whatever stage you're at. So if it's, setting up a little garden in your apartment or having plants in your apartment, or making sure you take the family out to go to a picnic at the park, or that you decide to go to a farmer's market to buy some food, in whatever way you can kind of add to the burgeoning and growing culture of earth-based consciousness that is happening. It doesn't have to be maybe what we did, or what you yourself may have done, Jewel, but it can still be supportive. I think even just people being interested in what we're doing, and just being like, hey, I'm on the sidelines cheering y'all on. I'm up in the stands. I ain't coming down there in the field, but I'm up in the stands though. I'm rooting for y'all. That's just as important too, because it gives us support from everybody in society for what we're doing in some way, shape, or form. And given the circumstances we live in, I think that's huge. I think it's huge.
I agree. I agree with that totally. And I'm glad your experience with the show was a genuinely good experience that helped you all. And my questions came from having participated, because there were actually two shows that were occurring around the time that I was on Tiny House Big Living. And my show was very, so they were more of just watching our journey and chronicling our journey. So it wasn't the help. They were just really kind of watching the process. There is another show where they're building and helping and do all the things. But behind the scenes at that time, and I can't speak to today, but at that time that it was happening, I knew that there was a lot of propping up of things and things being made to look like they were operable and they were good for the show. But then behind the scenes, they weren't, or behind the scenes, things were left undone and they were on to the next show. So I actually knew, like, there were people who were suing because they didn't end up getting what they were promised out of the show. So I was glad I had an excellent experience, but I was on a different show. So I was wondering, and it did look like the work was really authentic and that it was helping you. And there's another show where, like, people are already in the process and they kind of know the things that they're doing, but the show comes in and kind of makes it seem like it's their decision. So I was wondering where you all
Okay,
were
well, I'm
in
glad you brought that up, though. I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up because there was elements of that too.
Oh
In
yeah,
terms of like
and you
not
can see it in the previous other episodes, not even just ours, where things are left
right,
undone.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But so there were things that did happen once they left that like we were talking about went against state code and not structurally as well and stuff that he didn't put in the final edit that was
Okay.
done.
Okay.
We had a a outhouse that was developed and built, but where it was built and placed by our makeshift well went against county regulations, and on top of that, so we had to disclose the use of it. So they built a privy, which is a big hole basically in the ground about 7 feet. Probably something they would do in Alaska where it's okay, but here it's
Right.
not okay to do that. So I
Right.
had to actually source dirt from a construction site down the road and physically bring dirt and fill up this hole myself to close it off so that the state, because we didn't have the resources, just have them come in, remove the stuff, and then put something in there. So there was that. Then they made a makeshift well, as you know, that well where they dug the spring. Well, due to the report that happened with us on the state, we had to end up getting that removed. Now,
Oh wow.
we have been working with a production company and closely on that, and they are supportive in regards to the financing of said things. We are finishing up some finalizations on other things that have to be met in terms of requirements for the state and the county. We will say they have been supportive in that. We do know that when you're talking numbers and you're talking legalities, you got to keep you got to keep this eye open, like the third eye got to be open. You don't know when they can switch it up on you. But so far they've been supportive and like are trying to keep. It seems like the theme extends beyond just the show. We'll
That's excellent.
stay in touch with you. We'll keep you posted on that. But there were a few things like that occurred that had we had to put time and effort into recovering those situations. Physical effort on my part a lot, and it would have been nice to know that those things didn't occur. So there were those things, and that did happen. But overall, if I would say we probably would take 75% great, other 25% it's like
because, and I'd say because of the ongoing stuff.
Yeah,
and it's a rush
because of the ongoing stuff, and that's the thing. That show is not a makeover show.
So
it's not that we thought things. We'd seen all the other episodes, literally all of them. And there were things that were left undone and things that they tried that didn't work. That kind of thing. Like he built a whole windmill at one point, and it was like they were counting on that for the water, and it didn't even work.
And then,
but they spent all this time building it.
Family in our season, they were living in a really interesting place, and so Marty, like they were living in a bad trailer, so he constructed an A-frame, but they didn't finish the A-frame.
Right, it was like
insulation dangling out. So it's like, okay,
it's definitely. We knew it wasn't a makeover show. We knew that the vibe of it too was that it's like, well, you're homesteading, like you're constantly dealing with different things than people who are living in certain kinds of houses where everything is. So,
but on the real, like they had the community stepped up. They reached out. It's all about about us, but Marty's in town, Squad is in town, so they hired.
Right.
So people were coming through and,
but it worked to your advantage. Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. Like, for real, I mean, I'm even willing to say, we could bump up from 75. If you really look at the whole scope of everything that happened, from 75 to really like 85, like 90%, because, we have some things that we have to deal with. But look at the scope in which we're dealing with it.
Of what
now we're having
and what got done.
Where our land is expanded, and we have facilities that we can use. And not only that, the production company potentially is going to pay for these things to be done, so that's
excellent. That's integrity.
So they're taking accountability for that role.
Because it's like we accept that it's our land, and so we accept the responsibility of that, and we have to do what we have to do. And also, it is very good to see that they are accepting an accountability and a responsibility.
So it ended up being a blessing, those reports on the state. We looked at it. We always kind of sense that must be when you have these experiences, that this is probably a blessing in the end. And it ended up working out for us. There's a lot of legwork she's had to do with the state and the county. She's been tremendous with that. And, and I've just been on the end of trying to make sure, like, from a do job standpoint, that we're doing everything we need to do. But overall, it's a blessing for us because we ain't got the Krispies, rolling. We ain't got the, we're doing our best. We maintain it. Don't get me wrong, but we ain't really excavating we're not
we're
doing
not
all
Oh,
that.
doing
So,
any of
absolutely. Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
true blessing. We hope to stay in touch with the Rainies, in the future. So.
Absolutely. So we're going to share some pictures in just a minute to have you talk through them. We've been chatting for an hour, so I want to to share
Wrap it
some
up.
pictures and move. No. I'm fine. If y'all are fine, I'm fine.
Oh,
One of the
great, great, great,
questions.
Yeah,
great,
we're
great.
chilling.
One of the questions before we go into the pictures. So when I talk about my dream of pursuing this lifestyle, I talk about it as being something that I am pursuing for like my personal freedom and liberation. And I talk about it as being like an opportunity for affordable housing, a quicker path to home ownership, something that our community sorely needs. And then I speak to how, for our community, like thinking outside of the box is something that we need to be doing because the status quo, the American dream, all of that isn't necessarily built for us.
For
And
sure.
so we need to think about ways to achieve things in a different manner so that we can actually get there. You speak about your work, your homestead as your life project. What does that mean to you, kind of tying it into the vision of what our community kind of needs to be doing? What are your thoughts when you speak of as a life project?
Well, I think just in terms of like land ownership, and I'll put that in quotes,
Because ownership.
quotation mark. Yeah, it's like really,
Right,
once you start dealing with these other entities,
once you
like,
realize, well, there's codes.
right,
once you
There's this
realize
or
exactly.
that
that.
the
Yeah.
history of everything that's been done applies to today, like once you realize that it's real, you can then. But I will say this, that it's empowering in the sense that we talk about real estate and owning homes and owning a lot of urban and suburban settings and but the thing about owning land, it has a different type of value. It adds a different type of value. It can be a space where you can kind of create and then pass all of what you've created down for generations if they choose to own it and maintain it. And we kind of need to focus on legacy building again, I think, as a community. And I think a lot of us are doing that. And I think land ownership and then the lifestyle, just us getting as a community back in tune with nature in terms of understanding like how we can actively have a relationship with nature and benefit not just in the ways of like what we give and what we get in return, like physically, like growing food,
Hmm.
using the materials from the land to build structures and learning the seasons and all that, but emotionally and psychologically as well. It can be a space for healing. A lot of the Black experience is always the narrative is that it's almost like all we are is urban people. When we know we
Right.
have a ton of relatives that live in the South and in parts of the country and in the country, like we have a long tradition in that too. And that's something I like to talk about. Like off grid living is something that's not, new to us either.
Right.
Like we all got
None of
relatives
this
that
is. None of this is tiny
this
houses
a couple
either.
of generations
Absolutely.
ago. Right. So we don't, even though we're not put out there in the narrative, and we know how the system works and what they promote as, when it comes to these types of interests, hiking, camping, off grid living. But a lot of us have been doing it and are doing it. And that's something we need to know that we're just, promoting a tradition that's already existing. But I think, for our community, it's just back to not just how you live and maybe in urban and suburban environments, maybe doing small things here and there, urban gardening and stuff, but like thinking long range about how can we have a piece of land for ourselves. And if you think about wealth, what is wealth? We know that there's that financial wealth you can have in terms of money, but owning land is a form of wealth that you can have a space that you can technically call your own and pretty much do what you need to do on it. And that's very empowering rather than maybe owning a piece of a house in the city, but you might not own the land.
Mm.
And what if
And
politics
that
or,
relationship with the land as well.
Well,
yeah,
and as far as like by life project, like I went to school for sculpture. I have a degree in sculpture from a college here in Virginia. And I moved to New York initially to do that, to pursue art and to be a sculptor and do all that. And I did for a period of time. And then, like I said, what happened with my dad in September 11th. And so I made that shift for myself. And I started to realize that my life is my art. That's the art. That's the canvas, is my entire life. And
Mm-hmm.
then here I meet this man who is painting, and like we're like on Zooms to get, well, it wasn't
The
Zooms,
FaceTime.
FaceTime, right before it was Zooms, FaceTime each other while he's at his canvas in DC, and I'm like, I'm gonna give myself an easel again. I want to bring that part back out again, and so we're doing that while we're on the phone, while we're first dating, and realizing that the art got brought back in that very literal way also, and like seeing that every step you take, every choice you're making is your opportunity to really create your life. With obviously there are
Absolutely.
circumstances outside of you that you can't control,
For sure.
but you can control a lot of things in the choices that you make. And so that's the life project, is that we're here on this land, we're doing this for ourselves, of course, we're doing this to have something to leave our son, that means something different than maybe certain kinds of objects,
Right.
but a space that he knows he can come to, whether he chooses, because I think right now he's at 50-50 with he's suburban and he's 50% land. That's what he
I,
says right now.
I
We'll
can
see
relate to
how that
that.
changes. We'll see how that changes
I'll say
over this
50
over
50
time.
for
I'll
now.
take
I'll take
50-50
50-50.
for sure. But but just that's a choice he gets to make, and
Mm-hmm.
so but we also want to be able to bring other people here, and we have done that,
Oh, yeah.
and as an herbalist, that's really important to me, to be able to share, because I talk to a lot of people who are uncomfortable in nature, but definitely a lot of us, like I said, I was often the only one at these herbal events, at these workshops, doing these things with plants. I was the only Black woman there, Black person there, and so
Well,
having a
we have
space.
we,
Oh
we
yeah.
we have to go back and think about like that forced labor camp. Like we have to understand the relationship of
There's a
our
healing about.
traumas with the
Yes.
land, and trying
Yes.
to work around that in the healing. Our relationship
Yes.
with land and this type of work is a lot of association with trauma, and so we're having
Yes.
to relearn and unthink that, and it's
Yeah.
it's in our bodies, it's in our cells, so it's
Well,
not
and so
even. Yeah.
yeah, being able to be here, like have a space where people can come to, and at whatever comfort level they're at, we're like,
Right.
bring your own camper, bring a camper, bring your van, stay in our van, which is outfitted to, sleep in and live in, or camp in a tent here. We've had people camp in tents here, even just being here for a day, even just being able to
Yeah.
walk here and sit here and experience the sounds of
Yeah.
this in a way
Yeah.
that you can be comfortable and feel safe. That's important to us, and
Yeah.
that's part of the project. That's part of the purpose for doing it, is
For
to
this
create
life
that safe
Yeah.
project.
space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Absolutely.
sure. I mean, I think it's, uh, and that's something I want to say too, growing up in the suburbs and urban environments myself, I think, we're kind of conditioned to look at nature in a very antithetical way. Like, and it basically means oppositional. Like
Mm.
these bugs and insects and different things that happen in nature are here to serve their purpose just like we are. And I think it's okay for us to not really have that inherent relationship, but even if we go into it reluctantly, like
Mm-hmm.
everything is about exposure. And the longer you're out and exposed to something, the more you build a natural relationship with it. So I think we have to get past the notion of, oh, that's nature, I don't want to do that, to let me take a chance and start by maybe going on a hike for a day. And then, when I get the courage after taking several hikes, maybe I'll glamp for a night somewhere where it's nice, it has the amenities, but I'm a glamp. Maybe I'll, uh, figure out how to spend more time in nature so that I can unlearn the impulsive kind of reactions that are anti-nature, because
Yeah.
those are the very things that give us life. It's not
Yeah.
the buildings we make. It's
Yeah.
not, it's the natural world. Even cities rely on the natural world for all of their resources. And it's easy to get so compartmentalized that you don't realize if those services failed, and they have failed, unfortunately, in situations around the world for
They're gonna
different,
fail further. Absolutely.
you know? And so, what are you going to do then?
Mm.
Now, that doesn't mean that this way of living, like, I'm not trying to say, oh, we're 3 or 4 steps ahead of the game. I
Right.
just think that if you can start to think in ways where you can build a more reliable relationship with nature, in terms of at least learning how to grow food and maybe harvest meat if you're a meat eater, and or raise meat around and kind of have sustainability, learn how to build structures out of the local environment, that can give you the stability to keep that generational wealth or keep posterity going forward. Because those are skills that no matter how quote unquote advanced the worlds get will always be essential.
Right.
Even corporate farming is still farming. It's still planting and growing food. It doesn't change, you know,
Right.
it doesn't change. So it's okay to take those baby steps and try to unlearn. I think that's really important in our community. I think
Yeah.
we have to be
even
able.
more than unlearning, remember. Like, I think
Okay,
Right.
it's
okay,
like
Right.
it's
In the
our
cells.
right as
And
human beings to be on the earth.
yeah.
I mean, we're on the earth, we're part of this. So like it's our right to feel comfortable here. And that's, I
Absolutely.
think, when you talk about the trauma that many of us still, we hold that in ourselves, right? We hold that
Absolutely.
history. And even if it's not, I mean, because like I think I've heard you say too, but many of us don't know our literal history.
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
adopted at 3 months old. So I know certain things, but I can't even know going back to one person right now. I go forward to my son. That's the person I'm
Yeah, we kind of
biologically
share
related
a different,
to.
because I just found
So,
out I found out
oh,
like a month ago. I found out on my mother's side. Like, check this out, Jewel. So I found out on my mother's side, you know, we go back in our family tree a little bit. We might know a relative who keeps some documents and things. But, and this makes the history a little bit more visceral, a little more real for me in terms of like land relationship, because in North Carolina on my mother's side, or on my grandfather's side, I found out, I think about like 4 generations uh, from him, that my great grandfather was an enslaved African, and but yet my great grandmother was a byproduct of the so-called master and an enslaved person on the plantation. So you talk about the dynamics of like, okay, well, our family tree goes to the root of the development of this country, the history of it.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
when I'm in a state like Virginia, when I'm in a place that's in the region of the Carolinas and the Appalachians, and I'm thinking like, wow, there was some significant periods of my family's history that developed right in this area, and here I am around this area.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might live in a certain region or a certain space, and you feel like there's a pull or an
And you
attraction
don't
that kind of
even know what it
out
is.
there.
Absolutely.
And you think like, it's like, man, I'm just trying to go out and but something's keeping me here. And as I've learned, like
Right.
as I moved and lived elsewhere, this desire to come back and be in this very area might be very genetic, like you were
Right.
saying, or
Right.
energetic or vibrational. And it may
Absolutely.
not have to be chronological. It could just be that, you know, history is passed down through our bodies as well.
I mean, and that's
you know?
something we talked about when we first came to this land, because it was covered in briars in a lot of the places. And when we were trying to walk the perimeter and trying to just see what was here, and we talked about that. We were like, if we were running from somebody right now, like this would be insane.
Oh my God.
And the fact that because we really got stuck for a minute, like amidst these briars, and we were like really had this visceral moment of like, oh wow, okay, so what we're doing right now is huge. Like
Mm-hmm.
it may seem like very like, oh, we've wanted to get land and we're into this and this is the kind of life we live, look at us, I mean, it's a cliche, whatever, but
Right.
like we talk about healing, like at some point we get to be healed, and we get to heal the stuff that happened before, because we're doing this right now. We
Right.
get to say, and I don't think it's like, even though it's a replica of a cabin, from a forced labor camp, it was built in 1968. Don't go by what this show said.
Yeah,
I don't know who knew what. I'm
Oh,
just
that's what
saying.
we said.
Okay.
There's things that
Okay.
right. It
but
wasn't.
but still, this the energy of that, and just knowing that, like, oh wow, we look at what we're doing. Like our ancestors, whatever the combinations and whatever, because for me, like I said, I have to go on pure intuition and feeling when it comes to that, because I can't go on anyone's narrative, because
Right.
I only have me to go
Right.
by.
Mm-hmm.
And so in creating this narrative for my son, it's got to be about you have a right to be comfortable in the woods. You have a right to be, we have a great friend,
Comfortable
James.
and safe.
Right, exactly. And so that's part, like, I think you have a something you do with farmers and nomads, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure of Way Out Railroad,
Mm-hmm.
that we connected with them. They've been here and
They're
like
wonderful.
providing these spaces for us as we travel, so that we do know, well, I do want to travel, but I want to know that there's somewhere I can go where
Absolutely.
I'm going to be safe. Well, that's this
Absolutely.
place for us. We're doing that for ourselves, and then we extend that to making these relationships with other people who are also trying to
we're
just
very conscious of that.
do what I want to just keep right to be comfortable. It's our right to be safe. It's not something anybody has to give us. It's something we just decide that's what we're going to have, and we can create for each other and together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Crystal.
Yeah.
All right,
No, it's
let's
true.
look at these pictures. We can talk while we're looking at some pictures too.
Right. We'll chat it up.
We love
Okay,
talking about this.
let me change my screen. Hang on a second. All right. Are you able to see the pictures?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
You turn it.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me do this. I'm doing this wrong. All right, there we go. All right. So this is you all out on your land.
Yeah, when we first got the property, I mean, I want to say that was probably
before
like shortly. Was that even before it closed? Before we closed it, was that like our second trip out there after our
No,
first?
because look, there's a but that's the survey tape. So it's possible this. No, I think it had closed.
If it closed there, because it closed. Yeah. They surveyed it the day it closed. So
this was before we had a driveway.
Before we had anything out there. Yeah. So this is basically like in the very beginnings of around August or September.
I found that feather that day. So
beautiful.
Yeah, right there on the property. So that was it, and that is the first rain catchment system we developed. This is like if you notice all the trees, because of the timber operation that had happened over a decade prior, you see they're small. So that's one of the things that drew us to the property. Like I was saying earlier, we were able to get in there in our hands, make space to start to set up situations. So that was cool for us.
That was the very first rain catchment system we set up.
Yeah.
I had seen a YouTube University video about using tarps for that. Okay, so
yeah. Oh no, that's you
very
can,
cool.
Move forward if you like. Thank you. So that picture is across the street. I'm across the street and she's on the side of the property. Yeah. So this is before the driveway had been developed. We would just drive up on the ditch. We would
put plywood. We put plywood across the ditch.
Yeah, so we would take plywood and lay them across the ditch, so we'd have ability to get over and traction to get over, and then we would just basically walk away from it, walk into the woods, kind of somewhere behind the front tree line there, you see, and get to work. We just built a little trail along the side of the property, and then we just walk up in the interior and get to work. But these are the early days, old school.
Very, very cool. Okay, so I think I could have put that one. This is
that actually came, getting a tank that big came later, and we discovered, finding free pallets at different hardware stores and around different places, again, Craigslist and stuff like that, to set up that platform for that. But that was our first big water tank. We were super excited. Okay.
Very cool.
Shout out, there goes Way Out Railroad. So they, they're nomadic part-time, and they were really about, taking their kids out before they go to college and the like, and family trips and stuff. So they've been really supportive of us. There's the bus. We were staying in the bus. They stayed in our driveway and just really hung out with us. We took them around the property and just were, supportive of our development, and
we actually had met them at a Black Nomads event that was
in
Virginia. And so that's how we met them, and we had told them about what we were doing, and they came like not long after that.
Oh, they were about it. They're about it. Yep.
Very, very cool. All right, let's see what this. Okay.
That's our most recent compost bin that we're building there. That was the fourth one.
Yeah, we source in pallets, just from behind Lowe's, Home Depot. Just trying to find free materials to build structures we need, especially for like composting and stuff, for our lifestyle. And I'm sure for a lot of homesteaders and off-gridders and maybe some nomads, trying to find materials that are free that you can reuse and repurpose is like key. Saves money, and you also can learn a lot by repurposing them.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a gray hat on too.
I was looking at Lucretia's hat. Like, okay, I need to talk about that hat offline.
A friend of ours gave me that hat. I'll find out about it.
It's very cute.
Yeah. This is a wonderful family that we know. Yes. They are really into the off-grid back to
Yes.
nature living. They are really sincere
They
about
live
it.
in a school bus. They
Yeah,
live in
they
a
live in
short
Yes.
school bus, and they are in a cabin in North Carolina.
Yeah, and
Yep.
they run a small company called Vitality Arts,
Mhm.
and they're amazing. The husband Lev is trying to basically create different types of bone broths and animal broths, locally sourced from the farm, and Ife is a wonderful practitioner, herbalist, and creator. So
Mhm.
they're just really good people. We just wanted to show the different people that have come to the land and hung
Yes,
out
and
with
they
us.
have a new baby now.
Oh,
Yeah,
very nice.
yeah, they have two now. Okay, so that's Mr. Day. That's one of the men we met. One of our neighbors that we met first when we were out, because we, as you saw where the car was, people would see us all the time as they drive by,
Okay.
and so he saw us one day and was like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like almost 80. He lives not too far from here, and he always invited us to come and harvest greens. Amazing grower. And it's like this random thing. It's not random, but it's like this casual thing for him. Like he's got this huge garden space, all these greens. He will just tell you so much about like just the ins and outs of things. And so we brought Kiyoshi over there to harvest greens and radishes. I think that's what he's picking right there. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
there's
a
my
shot of
dude. We
before.
lost his two
Yeah,
front teeth.
yeah. That was out probably a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Out at the land doing the
Yeah.
work, and just took a shot. And it was all about getting him out there. We're really doing this for him, just so even if he decides to be a city guy, he can always know that he can have an appreciation for nature.
Yeah, there's that
Absolutely.
safety and that safety and that comfort that all humans have a right to.
Yeah, we wanted him just to have
Absolutely.
that. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's your boy out there trying to,
chainsaw.
learning how to, one thing about this off-grid living is you start to learn about, different, things you have to do. And I had never had much experience with a chainsaw prior to getting land. And I love working outdoors. I love physical labor. I love doing that kind of stuff. And so, cutting up trees to harvest for firewood, it was like a great opportunity because it's just another skill. And Lucretia caught your boy trying to figure it out. Out there trying to figure it out, Jewel. We out here trying to figure it out. Yeah, and that's the Rainies, and that's a very cool experience, being with them and what they were able to do in the time that they did it. And we worked really hard with them. They really encourage the homesteaders to work with them, and the more you do to help them, the more they do to help you. And they definitely gave us a lot of incredible stuff to work with here. So
I'm glad you all had that opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying that was the last day. That's right. They left.
Oh, right. When you were
very
giving the
soon.
gifts, I remember that.
Yeah, we had to put that on blast,
There's the dude.
And that's that dude,
cabin.
he's happy to Justin. He was very happy about, the changes that had occurred, and that definitely helped be a segue for him to start to appreciate this. And I've been at the mural in Richmond, working on the mural for like almost. Well, I've had a lot of other stuff going on, so it's kind of been spread along about 2 months now, and he's been at his grandmother's, and he's like, "When are we going back to the land? When are we going back to the land?"
Which that's an amazing breakthrough right there. So, he's asking us, "When are we going back to the land?"
Right.
It's like,
yeah,
okay, all right.
His 50-50 might be shifting. His 50-50 might be shifting. Yep.
There they are in the bus.
Yeah, that's us chilling,
because part of the bus got turned into my herbal workshop. So part of it is a greenhouse, and then that front part. So that's where they're sitting.
Yeah, that's the bus days. We were on there. As you can see, he's happy. He wasn't, sent home to his grandmother's. He was chilling with us. He's living the life. So, yeah.
Okay. What is that? Oh, installing a bee trap, because we discovered that this cabin, as it's been sitting there for a while, had carpenter bees. And so one of the ways, instead of spraying any pesticides and things like that, which we don't do, we found these bee traps. And so they basically, they go in there, and the goal is that they don't come back out of there. And so you put them around to draw them out of the wood of your house.
Okay.
Yeah. They gotta go. We talk to them as well, but
But
now this is what I was
around
about in terms of filling the outhouse hole. So I would go and I'd source dirt, and pretty much I think Lucretia helped me that day shovel some in. But that was a big.
It's
I
about a
mean,
ton.
it's about a
It
ton
had
of dirt. I
about
think
a
I
ton
made
of
about
dirt.
4 or 5 trips, and we had feed bags from some neighbors. They given us feed bags to go get sawdust from this local Amish mill, but we were using these feed bags to fill dirt, and I had a couple of extra trash cans on that we were using for other stuff. So I filled those up and would go back and make several trips to fill up the privy we were telling you about under the outhouse,
Got
which is
you.
that big deep
Yeah.
hole.
Mhm.
So
I got you. Okay.
Oh.
tell them about the festival.
Firefly. So this is Firefly, which happens
This past summer.
yearly right outside of Asheville, North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, we got an opportunity to go to this, and Kiyoshi got to run around with some other kids. It's really important to us for him to get exposed to other kids who are also living this way, because that's
Mhm.
the other part of it, is when there's not a lot of people around. It's like, especially for a child, they want to see, well, I don't want to be completely the same as everyone else, but I'd like to connect with some other people on this. So he got to see that. And this was a great earth skills gathering there. It was a 5-day event, but we stayed 3 days, and we camped in the van. You can camp on the property there too, in tents and stuff. And it was just beautiful. Just tents and tents of people teaching just basic skills of living on the earth. Really beautiful.
Yeah, but I definitely want to talk about the cultural dynamics of this type of situation,
which is
because
part of how we got there.
Yeah, because one of the things
Mhm.
is Lucretia, she knows Robin Greenfield, and for those who don't
Mhm.
know who, yeah, he's doing really pushing the sustainability movement, and
Right.
that was Lev and Ife, who you saw in the previous pictures, were going to the festival already, and then Lev mentioned to us, well, why don't you reach out to the festival? They might be offering opportunities and scholarships for minorities. So this is a key factor for a large part of our community, even people like ourselves who have been around a lot of white people our lives and kind of always existed in alternative Black spaces as well. It's important for all of our brothers and sisters, for our community, to go out into these festivals and situations, because like I like to say, we in vogue again. You know what I'm saying? Like, get access to the information.
We have more access
to the information,
because
and
they paid our tickets for us to go.
Oh, okay.
Because we wouldn't have been able to financially go, and that's something that Robin's group is trying to change. Some people
Mhm.
are actually doing that work. They may not talk about it a lot, and so I reached out to him and sent him a message, and he sent me a voice message back, saying, "Bring your whole family. I would love that. Please bring your family. We would love to have you." And so it was nice to see that it's not like we were the only Black people there. And it was really good to see some families there. But yeah, it could be more. It could be more. And like I said,
Absolutely.
we get to learn these things too. We can have these events ourselves as well, but it's also important. Like, we're in this world with everybody. And
Right.
so I think we get to show up. And like you said, right now is a good time because these organizations are looking to be more equitable as best they can. And if we don't tell our own stories, then it gets told for you,
And that's the important part right there. Like they
gotta show
might
up
not
and tell your
always,
story.
yeah,
Yeah.
they might
Mhm.
not always have the best intent, but if we aren't there to guide the narrative, then
to
then
capitalize off of
Yes.
it.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
This is
absolutely.
just us playing some Super Mario Life.
He loves that board
It's
game.
taken out. Yeah, he really does.
He loves that board game. So
That is
they
so
was
cute. Uh-oh.
they were at it.
And I wanted to shout out the table too, because we've had some really wonderful friends like give us really cool stuff to utilize here when they like, it's really cool to see that kind of support. Cause like we did a GoFundMe, we have a Patreon, we do all that stuff, but it's also like, just people really coming here and seeing like and participating and donating stuff like that is really fun. It's nice.
That's nice. The community support. That's great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So that's us. I'm out there. Was actually working on a little project about an artist who everybody should know. Alma Thomas. I definitely highly recommend y'all look her up. She's not from DC, but she lived most of her life there working and teaching. And she has beautiful work. Michelle and Barack Obama had some of her work in the White House when they were there in the White House. So she was the first Bachelor of Arts graduate at Howard University back in 1924. She was one of the first women to ever do a solo exhibition at the Whitney Museum of Art in New York back in the 70s. So she was a trailblazer as a woman, but especially as a Black woman. So I think it's very important. I mean, I've done workshops with students from Howard that didn't know who she was. So this is what I was doing. I was doing a replica of her work for a paint a paint night at a local middle school that I work with. I teach art workshops at, or I'm sorry, not local, but downtown Richmond, a
Okay.
school, black school, urban school down there. And so I was doing a replica piece to show them how to paint it. And my son was out there hanging out with me, painting something else. So
Very nice.
that was us doing that. But y'all check out Alma Thomas. She's truly a trailblazer, somebody to know.
Okay. So if you saw the show, they left us with these bees, and that's
Yeah,
one of
on the bus. Yes.
yeah, that is one of the premises of their show is that they try to leave you with some sort of food source, some sort of livestock, something to help you along with that aspect. And I think they saw that because I'm an herbalist and I work with I make infused honeys. They thought bees would work best for us, and so they left us with these bees. This is me in my bee suit. They gave us bee suits, and we are on a journey with the bees. We are figuring it out. And actually, at Firefly, I got to take a class from a really wonderful teacher, and I got to actually handle the bees. So now I'm feeling more confident about handling these. So when we just
That's
I go up there
excellent.
and sit near them. It's wonderful that they're right over my workspace. Because we did not leave them in the bus like in the show.
I wondered if they were going to stay on the bus.
Oh no, we
No, no,
took them
no,
out of
no.
there the next
No,
day.
no, no.
Yeah. So just in case anybody wants to know if our son was shoveled away from the land in the wintertime, there's a picture right there.
There's
Show
some
you that
evidence.
we out here, y'all. We out here.
One of our
There's some
jokes
evidence.
is on the first cold night.
Yeah, we always run that joke, but
That is
it's all
too
good.
funny. That's
So,
funny.
and that's actually we were actually sitting on top of the bus at that
Yeah,
time,
that
just
is
kind
what
of
I
just
love.
hanging
Hanging
out,
out.
looking at because this is prior to the show. So like Lucretia said, I had carved out a plot for some places to grow food and for her to grow
Medicinals and all that,
medicinal plants and stuff. So we were just admiring the work that we were accomplishing presently on the land and just hanging out, just enjoying ourselves.
Very nice. Okay. All right. So that's the I have another picture to share later, but that is the end of the pics that were shared. So thank you
Okay.
very much for walking us through those. So let me come back. Wait. There we go. Eventually I'll get it right. The technical stuff isn't my best work.
Oh, this is
Oh, you're
great.
doing
This
great.
is awesome.
Doing great.
So question for you. You've shared a lot of the things that you've learned about yourself, the things that you learned about yourself during this journey. You've just dropped a whole bunch of information on us for those things. Were there any things that you learned about yourselves that you were surprised about, or are learning about yourselves that you've been surprised about in this
Yeah.
process in your journey?
I'll say, speaking back to the whole nature thing and how like a lot of us are afraid of intimidated in nature. I've always been a kind of person who has strived to challenge my inherent biases towards things. It's just because I
Okay.
know that you can be so much. I understand that a lot of times life is just based on your perspective. And if you can
Right.
shift your perspective, you can be capable of doing way more. So for me, coming out here and spending a lot of time in the country, in the land, working with the land has given me a whole new respect for the animals and the insects that inhabit that land. Whereas before coming up in the city, I see a bug, I just kill it and I think nothing about it. Now I don't do that. If I see a wasp or a hornet, I'll put it in a jar in the house and I'll take it out. Whereas before it's like, what is that thing? Spray it, kill it, swat it. So I think it's okay for us to know that we kind of have these biases, but it's also okay for us to slowly, incrementally. I'm more like a throw yourself into the situation fire type person, but for some of us who aren't, just to incrementally take those challenges and those steps, because I just think for a person's soul to unlearn things and when it comes to nature, and to at least just feel more comfortable in the presence of nature can do wonders for how you live in the world, because you are here. This is where you at. And if you can not only feel comfortable when you're on the highways and at the grocery stores and at the malls and in your apartment or your conventional home, but you can feel comfortable sitting in a field or walking through the forest, and that be okay if you see a spider. oh, it's here to help the environment. It ain't thinking nothing about me. Having those things, at your disposal can just grow the value of living, period. I think that's important. So that was my biggest change is, challenging myself to know that nature knows what nature's doing, and I need to unlearn so I can relearn or remember, as Lucretia was saying, how to be back in touch with it. And I'm still growing and learning, but I've come so far in just the time that I've been doing this. So everybody take your time. It's possible. You can do it, y'all. You can do it.
Well, and I'll say, having grown up in the suburbs, both my parents, and they worked, and just listening, I would see the tension around tax time, and they kind of kept a lot of their money stuff from me. I never felt I wanted for anything. It wasn't like, they kind of kept that to themselves. And as adults, probably should do more, but I think involving our children somewhat in the financial world is important from an early age. So that's something that that I would have appreciated earlier on. But so seeing that kind of world of home ownership, and you're not really owning it because the bank can take it from you at any moment. Like, how is that owning something? Just as a child, filtering these things, I'm trying to figure that out. And so I kind of grew up not wanting to participate in that at all. And then when I realized after, before becoming a mom, but definitely that reinforced it, that wait a minute, like I said with earlier about, realizing we're paying $60,000. How much rent have I paid over my life to somebody else who owns that building? So there's got to be some other way to structure this. And so my biggest change, especially in dealing with all these state and county things, because I went through a real moment at one point when this first started happening, when we first got those letters, and I realized going back to talking about trauma and cellular memory and these things, I'm feeling like we're about to be invaded. I'm thinking something that's what I realized that I was feeling in my body about it. And that was part, because my parents both participated during the civil rights protests in the 60s. Like, my mom went to jail for that. My dad organized it, and she was one of the people who would go to that kind of thing. That's the ends they were on. But so I grew up hearing that stuff and realizing that I'm internalizing that narrative, and I'm internalizing those fears. And so that was part of my, I don't want to participate in that. But then it just became well, do I want to stay here and continue paying someone else's mortgage? Do I want to, and so making that change was huge, but I wasn't thinking about it from those code and regulation type of ways. I wasn't thinking about that. And so having now to deal with that and going through that moment, because I called him one day and he was like, are you all right? Because I had just gotten off the phone with the people from the state and the county, and they were telling us that we couldn't have a compost toilet, which was what our whole goal has been, one of our big goals that's very important to us. And so I got off the phone. I had sent them all this information. I had done all this research, and they were like, no, just sending. They were robotic with it. Well, here's the code. Here's the code. I called him in tears, just bawling, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can talk to this kind of thinking. I don't know if I can participate in this. And he's like, well, we have to, we have to do this.
What's the option?
Of course we do. Of course we have to. And so it was just, I got that out, and then it just became okay, cool. This is what we got to do. This is what you need from us. This is how things work here. Great. Then we're going to figure this out. And I will talk to whoever I need to talk to, and I will figure out what I need to figure out. But realizing that, like you said, that there is this trauma that some of us may not have experienced, or most of us have not, thankfully, experienced directly, talking about decades of trauma. But we experience things even now that call that up. And so being able to recognize that for what it is, and realize that this land wants us here. And when we're making these choices that are for the betterment of us and the people around us, that it's going to work out, and you just keep moving forward with it. And so that's been my big change, is thinking that as a kid, I would never want to be dealing with this stuff. I would never want to be talking to any of these people about this stuff, but it's exactly what I'm doing now. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can relate to that, in sharing my story. It's not always good stuff that you get to share, but it's stuff that you want to share so that you can help someone else navigate their journey In some ways it's cathartic in sharing so that you can get it out. And then sometimes there are resources as you start sharing. People are like, oh, I know how to deal with that, or here's an idea. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well. um what would be the title of your autobiography? It's autobiography.
Title of our autobiography.
That's
That's a
good.
good.
That's a really
question.
great question. Hmm. Hmm.
Title of our biography.
You're usually so good with words.
No, no pressure or anything.
Yeah,
No, no, no,
so
no,
I'm
no, no,
gonna
no.
send it
You gonna
over
dip
to
that over to
send
me?
it over to
Ah,
you.
shoot.
Wow.
Title of our biography. Let's see. I'd say living and learning.
I like it.
You know what I'm saying?
I
We
like
might
it.
come up with a different one, but I
I
like
like
it.
living and learning because that's you gonna
Living
do
and
that.
learning with the land.
Even if you learn how to, put your keys somewhere else so you don't lose them. If you learn how to, you know what I'm saying? You're gonna be doing that, and we're doing that in our own particular, I guess if you want to say particular way. And that's what it would be. It would be our life would be about just living, being blessed to be alive, and being blessed with the faculties to be able to learn and then act on what we learn. And just share with people that happens in a number of different ways, and just try to be transparent about how it happened, and just don't give up, and stay committed to the path. Because
Any subtitles?
No, it's just giving you a gist of
These are
the gist.
these are some of the chapters, Lucretia.
Yeah, some of the
Synopsis. Yeah,
seasonings,
okay.
you know what I'm saying, to the
Seasonings. Okay.
recipe, So, but I think, I think, and everybody can understand it because I don't want, you know, there's so many titles around everything people do in society nowadays. So I want to always come from it from a perspective of universal experience that it may not be off grid living, but you understand what it is to work hard or stay committed to something when things don't work out, or retrace your steps and try to go back and improve again. That's a universal thing. So this is the path in which we're choosing to do that. But we would want our experience to be received from more than just people who are thinking about living alternatively, but hopefully everybody can see some aspect
Yeah,
of their life we're doing.
yeah, yeah. That's the conversation. Like I always say, it's not necessarily just about tiny houses. The conversation isn't necessarily about just tiny houses or homesteading, but it is something in there for your journey, no matter what it is. Following whatever dream it is that you're following. There's something out of this story that can relate to that, even if homesteading isn't your dream. The don't give up part. Keisha and Noah, Mellower Moves was, we had them on. I think Keisha is in the audience. And that don't give up was a big piece of their conversation. And again, that doesn't necessarily just apply to homesteading. It is whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is you're trying to do, not giving up. And like you said, figuring out, like, if you got to retrace your steps, and as I talk about following dreams, if you know from the beginning you're going to mess up, you're going to make some mistakes. If you know that from the beginning, it makes it easier when you hit those mistakes, so that just get on up and dust yourself off, learn from that mistake, figure out where you went wrong, and then don't give up and keep pushing it. So I absolutely agree with all of that.
It's all
Absolutely.
about perspective. Yeah, it's all about perspective. I was telling Lou, like she was saying, when she was upset, she called me. I was like, "Do you realize that you're living your dream? That like you got the land, and now those responsibilities that come with it. It's a privilege. Don't look at it these trials as something that's really trying to prevent you from doing something. It's to aid you. That's why babies fall before they walk, because it's a process of learning how to stand, but also learning how to fall. Learning how to
Yeah.
fall, and learning like it, because that's a part of it, right? So
Yeah.
if you can learn how to fall and have a level of grace about falling and getting up, like you said, Julie, just makes the journey that much easier, or
Absolutely.
you can be at more peace in the journey,
Yeah.
as you go.
So I want to speak to a comment I just saw. Tori made a comment about an unexpected lesson on safeguarding privacy as a landowner. A visit from anyone can have unwanted ramifications if bubbled up to county or state level. So I want to add another side to that because yes, that absolutely can happen where something bubbles up like what you're saying from the show. Then there was some awareness that was made and you all are now dealing with ramifications from that. However,
Sure.
on the other side of that, if they had never entertained the show, if we think about how far they got ahead in their journey with some of the benefits from the show, there were some pros to it. There are a couple of cons
Yes.
and things that
Yeah.
they've got to work out, but there were a lot of pros to participating in the show. So I want to that I kind of want to say it doesn't it's not always necessarily a good thing to hide it, because even if they had decided we don't want to participate in the show, there's still somebody that could have come on the land. There's still some awareness that could have
Oh,
happened. So it's
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
almost like blocking your blessings. You don't want to block your blessings because you're living in a state of fear. And we talked about that earlier
Yes.
on.
Yeah.
So there's some pros and cons to both of it. So I don't want to take away from that. If they had never been on the show, then maybe they would not have had these things happen with the state and county,
oh, no
because
question.
there were a lot of benefits to it. And I don't think I hear you all saying you wish you hadn't done it because of now
No.
what's happening. I
Grateful.
don't
That's
think
something
I,
we
Yeah,
talk
we
about
feel
all
yeah,
the
that.
time.
Yeah.
Like, would we change it? Would we go back? And it's like, well,
right,
actually, that is the blessing that, he did this when he did it, because
right,
now we have this TV show who's part of it, as opposed
right,
to when we were here before that. Because we were here before that, and like you said, at any point, someone could have said something if they had a problem with
Which
it, or
probably would have
just
happened
right.
at
yeah,
some
and
point
then it
down the
would have
road.
just been us dealing with
Right.
it,
Putting the
which
bill,
we
right.
had to do, but
Absolutely.
we wouldn't have
Would
had
have
the
had
support.
the resources. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and these resources,
Yeah, and I think
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
like there's this quote by Neil Donald Walsh, and I always remembered. I learned in my early 20s, and it's true. And you're probably familiar with this quote, Jewel. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone, and
Oh,
it's just
absolutely.
it's just like, I know we have fears, and a lot of the times, our fears are just an assessment of what we think is going to happen, and we have to really understand, well, where is that fear coming from? How do we feel about the world around us? How many narratives have we taken almost too literal that we've kind of allowed it to block us from taking steps forward? Because there was
Mm-hmm.
reservations on mine about doing the show. Like, we out here,
Mm-hmm.
everybody gonna know we
Mm-hmm.
out, in space, and
Mm-hmm.
you start
Mm-hmm.
thinking that. And show ended. I mean, yeah, we went into town a few times and had people say, "Hey, we recognize you," but we weren't ever really in it for that. Like, Lucretia was like, I reached out to the Rainies,
Yeah,
not to
I didn't reach
Homestead
out to the
Rescue.
show.
We
I
were
reached
looking for the
out.
actual
Yeah,
literal help and expertise
yeah.
and
I
experience
got the
to
sense
help
that
our
they actually came and did work,
yeah,
and that's what they
and
were
Yeah.
that's what
about.
they were about.
Yeah.
And so we were blessed in that regard. But in terms of that, it's always probability. It's always a scale. What are the pros? What are the cons? And if
Yep.
there's more pros, there's going to be cons. Take the chance. Like, nothing bad has come of it. That, and
Right.
we haven't, thankfully, had any situations where people who are out there that might have different perspectives on who we are, why we live, the way we are. I think you can have one bad incident happen in life, but that doesn't mean there aren't hundreds of thousands of other wonderful things.
That,
Are
right.
God,
Right.
this culture focuses so much, especially the media, on just negative, negative,
The
negative, negative,
negative. Yeah.
negative
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
before you step out the house. But every day you wake up, there's a risk
Mm-hmm.
in something
Absolutely.
happening to you. Every day you step out the door, so don't think that use the stepping out of the door of your house as a metaphor to life. You
Mm-hmm.
step in one door in your life, and then you step out of one door into another situation. So we stepped out of one door of, oh, we're in the city, to out into this situation where it's like, oh, this is a whole new circumstance. And when we first came out here, we was like, yo, you hear that noise? Or you know
Mm-hmm.
what? That's all natural and fine, Black people. We are okay. I know. And it can be real for some of us, but
Yeah.
trust, you
I
can
know those
do it.
sounds. I know those
Yeah, I
sounds.
know, right? And 9 times out of 10, it's just some animal,
And
going
then
about its
after
business,
you're out there a
and
while, right? You stop paying attention. You be like, oh, that's probably this, that's probably that. I
you
mean,
start to
Yeah.
recognize what
you
the sound
you still
is.
have to be mindful. You
Mm-hmm.
don't ever totally drop, your
Don't
guard.
go out and battle
A
a
skunk.
skunk
Skunk.
like Jewel.
Exactly. Don't try battling
Shoot.
skunks for kittens.
Yeah, be more concerned about the animals than people. You know what I'm saying? Because
Really.
you don't have to deal with them more.
When Pepe Le Pew was trying to get a date, just
Yeah.
stay.
Peppy was trying, but I did save a kitten, so that's another story for another
Cool.
time for
That's
y'all.
cool.
But I did
That's
save a kitten, and I
Yes.
hope that kitten is okay.
Yes.
cool. That's real cool.
Um, my one last question for you all. So, what is one question that I did not ask that you wish I had asked? Is there something? And if you don't like, I'm still going to ask you like where people can find you and support you, so you don't have to do that piece. But what is one question that I didn't ask that you wish I had?
Personally, I can't think of one. I think your questions were very they were great platforms to jump off of, and really get into it. Maybe after, this is over,
Well,
we'll
of
probably
course,
think,
you think about
something will
things
come to
after,
mind,
yeah.
but I can't, I guess, okay, this might be a good question. I can't say I thought of this, but I'm thinking of it now because I know as a community, how we operate in society or how we move about society is different. So you might have people in urban circumstances who think going out to the country might be like, yo, what's the vibe out there? We see the Confederate flags waving, this, that, and the third. And so, we're from Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy, all that. We're out here in the country. Prince Edward County was one of the last counties to integrate in the state of Virginia.
Oh, they shut their schools down.
One of our neighbors
instead
is,
of integrating them.
One of our neighbors' dogs is Bobby Lee. You know what I'm saying? We get it all.
We just gonna call him Bobby. We just gonna call him Bobby. We're not calling him Bobby Lee.
Just call him Lee, right? So, but for those that we as people in our community, we constantly, I feel like in some ways are forced to digest just a certain narrative of our experience over and over and over and over and over and over again. So much so to the fact that we forget that our ancestors have been here through even much worse and made a way and moved around this country and moved about.
And here before all that.
So, yeah. So if you want to get deeper. But so for people that feel, they're afraid to move about in these rural areas because they think, maybe the racism is going to be more potent out here. And can things happen to you? Absolutely. Yeah, do those things happen? It's there. Oh, it's there for real. But so are we. We've been out here surviving.
We deserve to be here. Absolutely.
From the beginning. So just remember that.
And this county is actually predominantly black. It's the percentages are actually it's predominantly black, but it's still the South.
Oh yeah.
So
the South is super black. So we out here and we make do, and we don't pay no mind too much of it. You know what I'm saying? We just do our best. I mean, we're aware of it. Don't get me wrong, but we don't.
We can't speak to everywhere.
Yeah,
that's the thing. We can't speak to everywhere, but we, like any other black person that has traveled around the country into different places, have and even just where we grew up, have experienced what we've experienced. I've experienced things as a kid, growing up where I grew up, not far from here. But as far as like how people have actually been. I think that it's either they just don't interact with you, they choose to just not interact with you, or you might get a vibe of something. But like I said, this is a predominantly, I think it's like literally 52% black, that kind of thing. And there's people in this town, black people in this town who've been here just as long as the white people have been here. And that's the case in most rural places. If you start to scratch that surface and get to know, now the black people are a lot less willing to roll up in your driveway and be like, hey, how are you? Who are you? Because the other folks want to, see what's going on.
Right.
And
we understand that too. We're very aware. Like,
so like I said, with our DC
plates.
And there was the monuments came down in Richmond right when we came down here. And so we had people that I think also thought we were asked that at one point by one of our neighbors, like, are you here as part of the protests?
We're like,
the protesting against paying rent to somebody. Yeah, I'm protesting paying $60,000 in rent to somebody who was actually a black landlord.
And that's what I was about to say too. That's what I was about to say. We are, at the end of the day, whatever their myth is that they believe about white supremacy, everywhere. We are human. And you can catch it from your own people. We all know this. There are people that feel just as unsafe in certain underprivileged economic Black areas in the urban city as they do maybe in some of these rural areas, because the threat of danger is everywhere. So please don't let one story define all of reality
it
for
means
you.
It's like, be careful, be aware,
Right,
Wherever
and like
you are
right.
and
you're
wherever you
creating,
do.
and like Way Out is creating, get to know the people where you want to travel, like actually find out about where you want to travel, but don't, like, what is it, Bessie
Don't live in
Stringfield?
fear. Yeah,
Yeah, Bessie Stringfield, who in the 30s, a Black woman who traveled the country multiple times on a motorcycle by
right.
herself,
Yes, yes.
who slept on the side of the road on her bike when there wasn't a place for her to stay as a Black person. Like, those are the kind of stories. Like, I have pictures of her. I have a picture of George Washington Carver. Like, I like to keep those images around to remind me that we've been out here doing what we need to do, and that's what we're going to continue doing. Yes, things happen to people. All the people have that stuff happen
That
to white
awareness.
some white people shot somebody, like
Oh
a
my
woman shot her
goodness.
ex-husband not far from here over some divorce papers or
We
something
came
crazy. It's
here
like,
one night
people are
and
nuts
literally two
sometimes.
cars had stopped down the street and we heard it and
We
saw the
heard the
lights through the
shots.
trees.
Yes.
And so again, danger is everywhere. The threat. So don't
We want to
allow.
encourage that and be that example as you are being, that yes, we can encounter this. I
It's an
don't know
aware. Yeah,
how,
it is.
but we can encounter this stuff, but we have to still, like I said, we have a right
Press on.
to be
Yeah,
here,
we
to be
deserve to
here and
be
do
here.
what we need to do.
That's
Absolutely.
the real legacy that we're inheriting,
Yeah.
is the ability to move on and to take chances in spite. Because if our ancestors didn't, where would we be right now? If the ceilings that they had to face, where there wasn't anything remotely around to inspire you, but you decided that your humanity mattered more than somebody's opinion of it or
Right.
somebody's perspective. And that's what we have to hold on to as a people and as a humanity. And I think that, that's what inspired us. And we hope that inspires other people of our community to, like, look, at the end of the day, we're in control of what we're in control of. And, we're going to leave the rest up to the creator. And hopefully the creator
I
will
agree.
support what we're doing.
I agree with that. I think, like, I share my journeys. I've shared about having to move my house twice because of issues with racism. But I also feel like there is an awareness. Like, I wasn't gonna move out of my house and not live in my house because of that.
Exactly.
I'm still going to live here because, like you said, I deserve to be in this community. I deserve to be able to live in a tiny house. I deserve to be able to live where I want to live. But there is an awareness. So I share that. So you don't think it is all, like you don't think that it's all well and good without paying attention to what's going on. There are areas I don't frequent at night. I'm moving by moving by myself. I have the means to take care of myself, but I also don't live in fear. And that is the big thing. I know the possibilities, just like you said. I know it can also happen in a Black community. I'm very aware. I see the flags. I see all of the things. So I know. But I still am gonna choose to move about because, like you said, this is my pathway to my personal liberation, and I'm not going to allow them to take that from me because I'm gonna live in fear.
Right, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like, totally.
Yeah.
Important. It's important. I think, because that was one thing we were living in DC. We tried to get some friends together to talk about land and go on land. And some of their biggest concerns were like, well, we're going out to the country. Is they going to, and like one of our neighbors is open, like I said, Bobby Lee. And see the complication and the complexity of racism in this country and history in this country is that, that was the very people that helped us get the bus. You know what I'm saying?
And I will say this: it wasn't racism. And again, I think I'm pretty certain that's who called the state. But it wasn't racism. It was neighbor crap, because he wanted an easement. He wanted they were trying to sell their house and he wanted an easement. We didn't want to do that. And we just said, amicably, like, no, thank you. We don't want to do that.
We've heard stories just from the white people dealing around
problems
here.
with
crazy.
Everyone in this town.
Okay.
Like, he's here and everybody knows him and they know about him. It's like, but that's like, when someone gets the gears turning with the state, that's the state. That's how it
happens. Yeah.
That's just
we've known, and so our thing is, look, we're not here to change anybody's minds. If you're going to treat us with a certain level of respect, we have to accept the fact that people are going to believe what they want to believe. I think that where we look into the side just to keep everything cool, yeah, of course, but at the same time, we have just as much a right to be here as anybody.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
and I can understand certain circumstances depending on the level of their passion about their views. Some people are more active.
Yeah, and it's like you
so
said,
you might have had to be in a
you made the
situation where you're
choice
like,
to
yo,
move
because I'm not dealing with that drama.
I'm not going to do
I don't
this.
want none of that near me. Yeah,
I'm
out.
not here to fight this
and
fight.
That's dope.
And then you continue doing what you're doing. That's the point. So we're not saying don't ever.
You're not saying just stay in some situation and stick. No,
it's not
they
about
leave
suffering.
us alone. They don't bother us.
No one's bothering us.
They weren't those types. There's levels to everything. They weren't at that level where we had to be like, but nonetheless,
go if you're looking at land, go there. And it's just like when I would go look at apartments, and my mom, before obviously I became a mom, she'd ask me, because she was so worried, me living in New York City and stuff like that, and she'd say, would you live there with your child? If you had a child, would you live there with your child? Let that help you be a guide. If you can't find it for yourself, you're not sure that you're picking the right thing. Think about it like that. And it's like, oh, okay. But that's anywhere you are. So it's
Absolutely.
like, go look at the place. Go look at night.
Go look at the daytime. Go look at nighttime. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Try to talk to somebody. Go to the stores that's nearby there. Go to a little gas station and see what it feels like when you walk in. Just go to the library, whatever you need to do, go around that area and see what it feels like, and just drive around.
And
again, if I could go back, I would already have known these folks in the county permit office. I would have already known them. Like, if that would be advice I would give, is to just go start off by getting to know them, and
I agree with that. Yeah. And just try to keep a positive attitude, and no matter what happens, let it be ordained by the creator, so to speak. We don't have control of everything, and I know that's hard to deal with, but it can, as my mom
likes to say, watch as well as pray.
So, I like that. Watch as well as pray.
That's the title of the autobiography. I like live and learn and watch as well as pray now.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Okay, tell the folks, and the information will be in the video description once I have a chance to get it up and going. So tell everyone share with us where people can find you and how they can support your work.
Okay.
Let's start with Off Gridish.
Let's start with Off Gridish. So you see the IG handle off_Gridish, but then we're also Off Gridish Homestead on Patreon and on YouTube. So we're trying to, like we were talking about, telling our own stories, like, the show that so many more eyes can be on us at this point, but just based on that little clip of our lives, which isn't even fully our lives. It doesn't tell all the background and all that and the ongoing story of us. So those are ways to keep up with us there. And then I have my own website, House of Lukaya, that's focused on herbal medicine, herbal medicine and classes I do online and in person. I make incense there. You can find that stuff there. And Khalid.
Yes, I can be, I have a website, KhalidThompson.com, all lowercase letters, full name, where my artworks can be purchased. I have different media up there. I was blessed to take a part in a wonderful documentary that was sponsored by the Smithsonian Channel called Afrofuturism, The Origin Story. You can check that out. I have a YouTube link on my website, and there's several interviews. Also have live painting performances on there. I teach workshops, intuitive painting workshops. I just finished up a workshop series with the National Museum of African Art at the Smithsonian. So that was a true privilege and honor. You can reach me on my handle, Khalid_Thompson, IG, as well as Facebook, and all that stuff is on my Linktree, my Instagram.
All right. Thank you very much. And again, I will share the information in the video once it goes live, but you heard it straight from their mouth. So I wanted to give them the opportunity to allow you all to go and support their work and their efforts. And so before we wrap up, I do want to remind everyone, let me see if I can do this. I did it right. Oh, kind of did it right.
That's such a lovely picture.
I screwed it. Oh, thank you. Okay, so reminding everyone that we're doing a community conversation, an in-person event here in Charlotte, November the 12th from 1 to 6. And so would love to have you all join. The link, I just dropped the link in the chat to purchase a ticket. And we are going to spend some time. It is a Sunday. We're going to spend some time in person in community and would love, love, love to have you come out and join us. All right, so let me get back over here to my here we go. There we go. Thank you both so much for your time for this conversation. This has been beautiful. I appreciate the opportunity to get into your lives and the background and all the things, all the information that you have shared with us. I always say this Sunday conversation, at one point I was trying to think about moving this conversation to another day, but I have opted to leave it on Sunday because it becomes so much of work for the conversation for the soul. And I have heard, we've seen that commenting happening in the chat, that people agree with that. So thank you for sharing as well and being part of this conversation this Sunday. So I'm going to ask you all to hold on one second. Don't hang up. And then I'm going to wrap this up. So I thank everybody for joining. Let me get to the right slide right here. Yeah, y'all already know how I do. I'm going to mess something up. All right, let me get it. All right, join us for the community conversation. Thank you all so much for hanging around. This is, I think this has been our longest conversation to date. So I thank you all for hanging in. This conversation has been great. I don't think anyone wanted to disconnect because the conversation was just flowing. So I thank you all so much for joining us. This again has been one of our conversations on intimate spaces. Oh my God, I'm looking at my chat and messing everybody's names up here. Thank you all so much for joining us. This conversation has been beautiful. Join us on Sundays. We're alternating between these conversations and the What's Your Question, where I'm answering frequently asked tiny house questions. And we'll see you next Sunday. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Jewel. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.